The President of the European Parliament, on his first official trip to the Holy Land, sets out to amplify calls for peace. Among the leitmotifs of his term as the chairman of the EU's only directly elected institution is the promotion of respect for human rights and dialogue between cultures. A meeting with spiritual leaders on Temple Mount is an important appointment, but there's a problem. It's an example of daily friction over access to the holy sites. Israeli police won't let the Parlamento camera team in, nor the European Parliament's camera.
They are my guests.
Correct authorization procedures were followed, but Hans-Gert Pöttering must enter without them. Further obstructions slow the passage from Jerusalem to the West Bank Palestinian territories. In Kalandia refugee camp, President Pöttering visits a health center run by the United Nations. The camp's population is 10,000. Half of them are under 15. 10% of the children in the territories are malnourished. 1/4 of them show signs of mental stress attributed to the general living conditions.
Support.
Both.
Yes. We have to do everything that each person on this earth can live in dignity. And regardless whether we are Europeans or Palestinians or Israelis or Americans or Africans, it's our political task and responsibility to work into that direction.
The father of the refugee family here has been imprisoned for anti-Israeli activities. Everyday life in the Palestinian territories is scarred with poverty. With little prospect for a better future, despair sows radicalism. For 1 year now, public sector employees have been getting by on 60% of their former salaries. International aid is suspended and Israel is withholding customs fees because key Palestinian politicians refuse to recognize Israel and renounce violence.
If we are asked to be helpful, we are very ready to do this. We are here as fair brokers. We want good relations to Palestine, to Israel, and we want to be fair and objective.
There is no avoiding the Israeli wall running around Palestinian territory. The World Court has called the wall a major violation of human rights. It was meant to protect Israelis, and since it was built, suicide bomb attacks inside Israel have decreased. But the wall separates villages from the outlying land, divides families, and stands in the way of work. In the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, Pöttering meets Christian leaders, Orthodox and Catholic. Then his journey continues towards Jerusalem. The 5-star King David Hotel, one-time shelter for deposed monarchs, fortress, bombed by Jewish resistors to British rule, becomes Pöttering's headquarters for 2 days. Here he meets Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu, and representatives of Israel's Arab population. Security concern almost cancels a meeting with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, but it goes ahead in Gaza. A group of core EU delegates forays out. A growing number of MEPs from across the political spectrum have been calling for recognition of the new Palestinian government of national unity. This would empower Abbas to negotiate with Israel. He graces God in greeting Pöttering. Later, Europe's senior protocol officer sums up his assessment of Gaza as unsuitable for the people living there, unacceptable for the Arabic-speaking world, and unworkable for the international community.
Concerning President Abbas, I have confidence in him. The European Parliament should provide him with all political, moral and also financial support possible in order to establish order as well as possible in the Palestinian territories and in the Gaza Strip.
Pöttering invites a laureate of the European Parliament's Sakharov Prize, Nurit Peled, for talks in the King David's Olive Tree Room. The rights activist's teenage daughter was killed by a Palestinian suicide bomber.
The state of Israel reached the lowest point of humanity. The Palestinian people is locked behind walls, like in a huge concentration camp. They cannot move from one place to another in their own areas. They are deprived of every possible human rights, including separation of families. and other atrocities that you can imagine. They are deprived of livelihood, of water, of electricity, of medical support, of anything. And I think the European Union should urgently apply sanctions on the Israeli government in order to help the Israeli people and the Palestinian people.
At the Ministry for Foreign Affairs in Jerusalem, Israel's top diplomat Tzipi Livni gives a press conference.
Challenges, but maybe new opportunities, and let's hope that we'll find that. The situation in Israel is complicated, and Israel is being attacked from Gaza Strip. We are facing a situation in which Israeli civilians had to leave their homes.
Trauma over past mass murder, about homeland and existence, is impossible to erase. At the Holocaust Memorial of Yad Vashem, Pertering reiterates his convictions, saying it's humanity's duty to defend life, peace and freedom in the face of the most evil of crimes, always. With the head rabbis, Ashkenazi and Sephardic, Pertering discusses the merit of furthering dialogue between cultures, encountering like spirits. He tells them, "I'm impressed how well informed you are about what we do." In the Knesset Parliament, he again pays homage to all the victims of the Shoah. He expresses the EU's solidarity with the people of Israel. He also urges the Israeli government to unfreeze assets for President Abbas to use and calls for the release of the Palestinian Minister of Education, who was arrested without charge. From the Palestinians, he requests the release of kidnapping hostages and condemns militants' use of Qassam rockets against Israel. In Amman, the capital of Jordan, Pertering meets the king, Abdallah II, who has accepted a counter-invitation to visit the European Parliament soon. Abdallah is one of the most important and influential mediators in efforts to bring the region's opposing parties back to the negotiating table.
The European Parliament would be well advised, and that will be my message to the Assembly, not to lose patience. We must speak up for and be committed to peace in the Middle East. It's very difficult, much more difficult than I thought, and confidence can only be built up when one talks to each other. This has to happen between Israelis and the Palestinians. One has to build trust, as we succeeded in doing in Europe, in spite of difficult conditions. We went this way, and I hope that one day this will be possible here in the Middle East too.